I've always been a night owl, the kind who finds solace in the glow of a computer screen when the rest of the world is fast asleep. My friends would tease me about my obsession with the strange and unusual corners of the internet, but it wasn't just a hobby, it was an escape. Reddit became my go-to place, a haven for the curious and the bizarre. The more obscure the subreddit, the better. It was like exploring the dark corners of an abandoned house, never knowing what you might stumble upon. One night, I found myself scrolling through r/nosleep, a subreddit dedicated to horror stories. Most of the posts were well-written, but I knew they were fiction. Still, there was a certain thrill in pretending that some of them could be real. But that night, I was searching for something different, something real. I began searching for subreddits with fewer subscribers, hoping to find some hidden gem. After what felt like hours, I came across a subreddit with a single post, r/DarkTruths. The description was simple: where the truth hides in the dark. The post had no title, just a string of random numbers and letters. It looked like gibberish, but something about it drew me in. I clicked on the post, and the screen flickered before displaying a long block of text. The words were almost hypnotic, a disjointed stream of consciousness that didn't make much sense. Yet, I couldn't tear my eyes away. The text seemed to shift as I read, almost as if it were alive, breathing, and pulsing on the screen. It was only when I reached the end of the post that I noticed something strange. My username was embedded within the text, repeated several times. It sent a shiver down my spine, but I brushed it off as a weird coincidence. Maybe it was just some clever coding trick. The last line of the post read, "Welcome to the rabbit hole." As soon as I finished reading, a message notification popped up on Reddit. It was from a user named the Gatekeeper. "Do you want to know the truth?" the message read. My heart skipped a beat. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard, but curiosity got the better of me. I replied, "Yes." Almost instantly, another message appeared, this time with a link. The Gatekeeper's warning was cryptic. "Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Enter at your own risk." Without thinking, I clicked the link. My screen went black for a few moments before a video started playing. It was grainy with a timestamp in the corner, but I could make out a dimly lit room. A man stood in the center, his back to the camera. The audio was muffled, like it had been recorded on an old VHS tape. The man turned around slowly, his face partially obscured by shadows. My blood ran cold when I realized he was wearing the same shirt I had on. The room behind him looked eerily familiar, my bedroom. The man in the video took a step forward, and that's when I noticed the reflection in the mirror behind him. It was me. My heart pounded in my chest as the video zoomed in on my reflection. The version of me in the video was smiling, a slow, sinister grin that didn't reach my eyes. I watched in horror as the reflection mouthed a single word, "Run." The screen flickered again, and the video cut to black. I sat there, frozen, unable to move. The familiar creak of my bedroom door jolted me back to reality. I spun around in my chair, but there was no one there. My door was closed, just as I had left it. I quickly shut down my computer and crawled into bed, pulling the covers over my head like a child afraid of the dark. I told myself it was just a prank, some elaborate hoax to scare gullible people like me. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The next morning, I tried to find the subreddit again, but it was gone. No trace of r/DarkTruths or the Gatekeeper. I even searched for the video, but it had vanished from my browsing history. It was as if it had never existed. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, just a vivid nightmare born out of too many late-night horror stories. But every night since, I felt like I'm being watched, a creeping sensation that I can't shake. Sometimes, I'll catch a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision, a shadow darting across the room, or a flicker on the edge of my computer screen. Last night, I found a note on my pillow, written in handwriting identical to mine. It read, "The rabbit hole never ends." I haven't logged onto Reddit since, but I can't escape the feeling that something is waiting for me there, lurking in the dark, waiting for me to fall deeper into the abyss. And the worst part? I'm starting to think that's exactly what I want. I tried to ignore it. For days, I kept my laptop closed, refusing to even glance in its direction. But the note lingered in my mind, its cryptic message gnawing at me. The rabbit hole never ends. What did it mean? Was it a warning or something more sinister? Despite my best efforts to push it all aside, I couldn't escape the gnawing curiosity. I needed answers, and the only place I could think to find them was online. But not on Reddit, not again. I wanted to stay far away from the site that had somehow reached out and grabbed me from the depths of the internet. Instead, I began researching other corners of the web, trying to find any mention of r/DarkTruths or the Gatekeeper. I searched through forums, chat rooms, and even some sketchy websites that I knew I should have avoided. But everywhere I looked, I hit dead ends. It was like they had never existed at all. A week passed, and I started to feel the tight grip of paranoia closing around me. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow that danced across the walls, sent my heart racing. I stopped sleeping through the night, jumping awake at the slightest sound. It was wearing me down, but the worst part was that it was starting to feel normal, like I was being conditioned, slowly drawn into something that I couldn't resist. Then one night I broke. I opened my laptop, hands trembling as I typed r/DarkTruths into the search bar. Nothing. The subreddit was still gone. But as I stared at the empty search results, a notification pinged in the corner of my screen. It was another message from the Gatekeeper. My breath caught in my throat as I opened it. There was no text this time, just a file attachment labeled truth.zip. My hand hovered over the mouse, every instinct screaming at me to delete it. But I clicked on it anyway. The file began downloading slowly, almost agonizingly so, as if the computer itself was hesitating. When it finally finished, I unzipped the folder to find a series of text documents, each with a title like truth1.txt and truth2. By the time I reached the end of the file, my hands were shaking. But I couldn't stop. I opened truth2.txt and found another account. This time from a woman who had found herself trapped in an unending cycle of fear and obsession after encountering the Gatekeeper. Her life unraveled as she became convinced that something was lurking just beyond the edges of her vision, always out of sight but never out of mind. Each document told a similar story, but the details were always slightly different. Different people, different places, but the same result: a descent into madness. And always, the story ended the same way, with a final note written in the protagonist's own hand, saying, "The rabbit hole never ends." I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding in my chest. I had to get out of there, clear my head, get away from whatever was happening to me. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door, not caring where I was going as long as it was away from that computer. I drove for hours, not even sure where I was heading. Eventually, I found myself parked at the edge of a deserted rest stop, staring blankly out into the night. The oppressive silence only made my thoughts louder. What was happening to me? Was it all some kind of twisted game? Or was it something more? My phone buzzed in the cup holder, pulling me back to reality. I hesitated before picking it up, my fingers hovering over the screen as if it might burn me. It was a notification, another message from the Gatekeeper. This time, I didn't bother opening it. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, refusing to look at it as I gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. But the phone buzzed again, and again. Each time, the sound was like a hammer driving nails into my skull. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I snatched up the phone and glanced at the screen. It was the same message, repeated over and over, filling my notifications until there was no room for anything else. You can't escape the truth. I threw the phone out the window, heart racing as I peeled out of the rest stop and back onto the highway. I didn't care where I was going as long as it was away from that damned message. But even as I drove, the words echoed in my mind, relentless and inescapable. The rabbit hole never ends. The truth is, I knew it then and I know it now. There's no running from this. Whatever I had stumbled into, it wasn't just some online prank. It was something far darker, something that had its claws in me, dragging me deeper and deeper into the abyss. When I finally made it back home, exhausted and drained, I found my phone waiting for me on the doorstep, despite my memory of tossing it onto the highway. A new message from the Gatekeeper was displayed on the lock screen. Welcome back. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. The messages haven't stopped, and the paranoia has only gotten worse. I see shadows where there shouldn't be any, hear voices whispering in the silence of the night. And every time I try to turn away, to ignore it, I feel that pull, like I'm being drawn back to my computer, back to the rabbit hole. I haven't opened the last file yet. I'm too afraid of what I might find. But part of me knows I won't be able to resist for long. Maybe it'll tell me the truth about what's happening to me. Or maybe it'll be the final push that drives me over the edge. Either way, I have to know. Because like the Gatekeeper said, you can't escape the truth. No matter how hard you try.